What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel, guys. We're back with Americans Living Abroad TikTok, and we with part 2 of when you realize America really messed you up. I think the first one, I definitely can agree with someone, even if not, for me, not living abroad or ever living abroad, like, I still could agree with a lot that they said, just being here and realizing. So we finna check out this part 2. Somebody else requested, there was like another question on TikTok, so I'm gonna check that one out as well. But y'all hit that subscribe button, send down those recommendations, and let's see what else I can agree with.
What is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
It's not current, but when I was studying in the UK, one day I really needed to see a doctor. But I didn't know how to access care. I didn't know what my insurance situation was like, so I just went to work. And eventually I was in so much pain that I burst into tears, and my boss pulled me aside. And he was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "I really need to see a doctor, but I don't know how to access care here. I don't know if I can afford it." And he was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Go down the street to the hospital." And I argued with him, and he was like, "No, just trust me. Just go to the hospital." So I went, and I was like clutching my like student ID in my hand, my passport, and I was like trying to remember how much I had in my bank account, like checking. And I got called back to the doctor. He was like, "Yep, this is what's wrong with you. Pick up your prescription on the way out." And I was like, "I'm sorry, do you know how much it's going to be?" And he said, "I don't know, maybe 8 pounds. I was like, "I'm sorry, 8? He was like, "Yeah, I don't think it's ever more than that." The receptionist kept laughing at me because I didn't feel comfortable leaving without paying somebody. And I kept asking if I owed anybody any money.
If you're,
I don't know how much 8 pounds is, but it don't sound like it's a lot, which is good. But I feel like that's like the number one thing. I feel like realizing that America messed you, that's the number one thing. The healthcare, that's the number one, gotta be for me.
I kept asking if I owed anybody any money.
if you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize?
I am back for round 2 on this one. So I just moved to Italy with my boyfriend who is Italian. We're watching a movie the other day where somebody is running away and they get shot. Oh. And I'm like, you know what? That's their fault. They didn't run in a zigzag. That's like the first thing they teach you, to run in a zigzag if somebody's pointing a gun at you. He pauses the movie and he looks at me and he goes, "Who taught you that?" And I'm like, like teachers, adults, parents, like they teach you when you're young to run in a zigzag if somebody is pointing a gun at you.
I don't remember learning that in school, but let's carry on.
The sinking feeling I had when I realized that nobody ever had to teach him that when he was young, because that's not a problem here.
That makes sense.
And currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Oh, I've got a couple. So I'm from Los Angeles and now I live in Austria. And basically when I first started working here, they were like, you get 25 days vacation, Fridays off early, and if you're sick, don't come into work. And I was just like, I was floored. Because in the US, you only get 10 days vacation and like 5 sick days, and you don't get Fridays off early.
And that, I feel like that really depends on where you work. Because I know some people, they don't even get 10 days. Some jobs don't even give you a vacation, matter of fact. Especially if it just depends where you work.
So you only get 10 days vacation and like 5 sick days, and you don't get Fridays off early. You better work your ass until it's 9 p.m. On top of all of that, all my friends here have like 2 masters, 3 PhDs, etc., because education here is actually free. Amazing. What an amazing concept. In addition, I have yet to see a large homeless community out in the open here in Austria because the government actually offers some social support. A lot of social support.
That's real good.
In LA, you have villages, streets, blocks full of homeless people because our government doesn't care about us.
Wow.
And here, people like don't measure their worth off the car they drive.
What is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
That girl was on the road or something. She was on the road. They go check her video.
Their worth off the car they drive.
What is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
So I'm from LA and I moved to Singapore. And before coming here, I asked all my friends if I should bring anything like, a pepper spray just in case anything happens. And they were like, no, that's like actually illegal. I don't think that they're allowed to have any kind of weapon. And I was like, what? We literally put them in our keychains as accessories. I was like, how do you defend yourself? They were like, from what? You don't have to. It's so safe. Dang. I was like, no way. So I Googled it, and no one is allowed to use greater force than necessary to defend themselves.
Wow.
What? The U.S. can't ban guns, but Singapore can ban pepper sprays?
Abroad, what is one...
That's correct. I'm pretty sure pepper spray is more harmless than a gun. I don't think you're going to just kill somebody with pepper. That's crazy to me. Wow. But yeah, you can be 18 and carry a weapon down here. No problem.
Can't ban guns, but Singapore can ban pepper sprays?
Abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up? I'll go.
When I had my first child, we were stationed overseas in Germany. And at that point, I'd been a nurse for about 5 years. And I had a C-section. So day 3, after I delivered, I was packing up my stuff and getting the baby ready to go home. And the German nurse walked in and looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm packing to go home." And she said, "Nein, you're not going home. You just had major surgery. We have physical therapy coming to see you. And dinner is on its way up. And if you'd like, I can call down and have them bring up some beer. But you need to rest." And I thought, yeah, I did have major surgery. I do need to rest. And they kept me for another week until I was ready to go home and I could take care of everything on my own.
Wow.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up? I'll go first.
I live in Warsaw, Poland now, but I always stay in touch with what's happening in the U.S., and I happened to hear about that Las Vegas shooting when someone opened fire on a bunch of concert goers, and it was very tragic news. But that day, I also went to the movies, so I was already in a kind of weird mental state, and when I left the movies, I got on the tram again in Warsaw, and I saw this guy kind of being sketchy and acting weird in the last seat. I kept eyeing him the whole time, and he had his jacket open, and he was holding something inside. He was hiding it. And I thought, my first American thought was, it's a gun or a knife or some kind of weapon, and I need to move away as soon as possible. So I kept looking at him the whole ride, and then he takes it out, and it was a beer can. He was sipping it and hiding it during the tram ride.
Wow.
That's what happens in Poland. Not guns, not knives. And I started crying and laughing at the same time because that's when I realized, wow, that's messed up.
That's really messed up. Like, people, like, it's like, what more can you say about the weapons? Like I said, unless you're just living a certain lifestyle, like, we watch mafia movies and different things, like those are probably the type, if you live in those type of lifestyle, then you probably might need a weapon. But I don't see why you should need a weapon for anything, like, especially if you doing good, you know, like, we shouldn't have to walk the streets and be feared, you know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't have to fear for our life just about, you know, walking around in our neighborhood and different things. Like, it's just crazy.
That's what happens in Poland.
Or even going out, because, like, in America, in the U.S., there's people, like, in Texas, there was even a shooting in a church. Like, who does that? What you going into church for shooting? It's crazy.
Not guns, not knives. And I started crying and laughing at the same time because that's when I realized, wow, that's messed up.
Very.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So I can make like 200 of these, but I'll just talk about the first time I realized how fucked up the U.S. is, which was in the first week that I got to Sweden, when my boyfriend's family told me that I need to make sure I get insured, and that I get insurance for everything I own, my laptop, my bike, my apartment, my whole body. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's so expensive.
Right.
Like, I'm already super in debt with student loans, so no. But I asked out of curiosity just like how much it was going to cost. $100 a year to insure everything I have.
Wow.
For reference, like, the average American person spends $456 a month just on health insurance.
That is correct. Everything. That's $100 for the year for, like, just anything and everything. Wow.
Person spends $456 a month just on health insurance. Just for healthcare. That doesn't include cars or home insurance. So.
American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
So I live in Paris, and 2 months ago I got hit by a taxi.
Oh, damn.
Relatively hard.
I fell down on the street. All these people came and they picked me up. They brought me over to a bench. Someone from a restaurant brought me a glass of water. Another woman gave me a handful of coins. And I was like, I don't need your money. It's okay. And she was like, sweetheart, this is your money. It fell out of your pockets when you got hit by the taxi. And I was like, Sonic the Hedgehog vibes. Great. The man who hits me goes to call the ambulance. And I said, stop. Do not call the ambulance. That will cost me $3,000 to $5,000 because that's what an ambulance costs in America. And he was like, what are you talking about? An ambulance is €7.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God. Remind me to twist my ankle on the way home from the club. And they'll give me an IV so I won't be hungover the next day? Catch me at the hospital. This is lit.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So my first year here in Paris, I was an au pair. And I got really sick during the winter. It was bronchitis and I couldn't breathe. I was coughing a lot. I was trying to avoid going to the emergency room as much as possible because in the US it's very, very expensive. But there was one night where I really couldn't hold out any longer. So I drove to the emergency room. And when I was there, they gave me a nebulizer. And then they wanted to give me chest x-rays. And I was like, listen, can we please not do the chest x-rays? I'm fine, let's just go. And the doctor looked at me and she was like, why don't you want to do these? You have to do them, you could have damage. And I said, well, I don't have any money, I'm not gonna be able to afford it. And she looked at me and she was like, it's covered with Social Security. So I was like, oh, okay. Wow. And then instead of having to book a whole another appointment and wait forever for the results, we walked down the hall, we took the chest x-rays, I had the results in 5 minutes. I paid €12 and then I was reimbursed 3 days later.
Wow.
I'm currently living
abroad. Got a reimbursement? Wow. I don't remember any time I got reimbursed from a hospital visit.
I paid €12 and then I was reimbursed 3 days later.
That's good. Currently living abroad. What is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
So I started my new job in the Netherlands. This was 3 years ago, and I was going through the company policy the first week. And I got to the section about leave, and they have a holiday leave, like PTO, and then they had sick leave in 2 different areas. And I was reading about sick leave, and I turned to my coworker, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, it talks about, like, the requirements for sick leave and, like, doctor notes, like, after 3 days, but how many sick days do we get a year? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how many are they? It doesn't say. She's like, it's just, if you're sick, you're out. I'm like, I don't understand. She's like, it's unlimited. It's just, if you're sick, you take a sick day. She was confused. I was shocked. There's a moment I realized we're fucked up in America and how we deal with people being sick with work.
And they come into work sick. Like, just working in education, like, you're bound to get sick because even some parents, they send their kids to school, like, very, very sick. And, those kids, they snot everywhere and they touching you and and you caring for them. And sometimes you get sick, right? You only get like 10 days. From a sickness that could possibly last 5, 10, 20 days. You get what I'm saying? Like, it sucks because when you run out of sick days, they try to move it, and basically you have to use other days to. It just depends where you work, but I know some jobs, like, you have to use other hours of leave just to be out and still get paid. It's crazy. That's crazy to me.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
Yeah, so this one hit me pretty hard. It was one of the first dates I ever had in Germany with my boyfriend, and he wanted to take me on a nature walk. Well, it was a beautiful day, and we went on this beautiful trail, but it ended out leading up to somebody's field, like a farmer's field, and I absolutely wanted nothing to do with that. I said, nope, that's it, we're going home, I'm not doing that, and he kind of was persistent and saying, like, why? And I was like, are you crazy? They're gonna shoot us. I was pretty new to Germany, so I didn't really understand how things worked yet. But I did grow up in rural western New York, where if you trespass on somebody's property, their woods or their field, there's a good chance that you'd be shot and killed. My next door neighbors would get blackout drunk and then start shooting off their back porch into the random wilderness. And he stopped me and said, nobody shoots trespassers here, why would they do that? Even if they're trespassing, like, that's so overdramatic. And it hit me how normalized that was for me growing up, that I could potentially die going for a walk.
Currently living abroad.
Crazy. That's always crazy to me, because you could probably possibly doing something innocent. Somebody can shoot you because they feel threatened when you just walking by them. Like, I'm sure y'all seen the news in the States. there's always some innocent deaths out there from nothing.
How normalized that was for me growing up, that I could potentially die going for a walk.
American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Here's a fun one. So I'm teaching 3rd grade in Thailand, right? And it's sports day. Kids running around, screaming, having fun, as kids do. And I hear a bang. Instantly, my heart drops into my stomach. My entire body tenses. My adrenaline starts pumping. And I'm looking around for the shooter. And then I realize I'm in Thailand. And people don't have guns. And they don't shoot children at their school. It was a balloon. A balloon popped.
Wow.
Fuck you, America.
American currently living.
The balloon pops do be sounding like gunshots, though. He is right.
Popped.
He is right.
Fuck you, America.
American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
So I grew up in southern Indiana, and I moved to London, England. So I just moved to England, and I made a lot of new friends. So I go to a party, this was like 3 years ago. And let's say one of my friends he drank too much water. And all my friends were taking care of him, including myself. And all of a sudden, one of them goes, "Hey, we gotta call an ambulance." And I was like, "No, dude, do you know how much money that costs? He just drank too much water, he's gonna be fine." And right when I said that, everyone looked at me and said, "Mate, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "Dude, the ambulance is gonna cost $3,000. And that was the moment I realized that England had free healthcare.
American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Hi. So I've been living in Spain for about 11 years, and this happened 11 years ago. It was my first time going to the emergency room, and when, stomach problems, whatever, couldn't stop throwing up. And I go in, give the girl at the front desk my ID and my debit card. And she takes my ID, checks me in, hands both cards back to me. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I give the debit card, I pay at the end. So I go in, everything, give me medicine, and I go back out. I stop at the front desk again, and I was like, "Hi, I'm leaving. Here's my debit card." And she just looks at me and she's like, "I don't know why you keep giving this to me. You don't need to give me your debit card. I don't get it." And I'm like, "Oh, you don't have to pay for health services, even in a private hospital."
Tell me you've been single a long time without telling me you've been single a long time.
Yeah, we don't want to hear about why you've been single the whole time. But man, that 2 major things: healthcare, weapons. I feel like we're almost conditioned. It's like we're at war. Growing up, it's like we at war. We're conditioned to hear gunshot, to see, a bunch of killing, a bunch of robberies. Not saying it don't go on everywhere, but it's like we're conditioned to have a weapon. You know what I'm saying? Because we already have to pay thousand upon thousand of dollars just to get ourselves right if we're not feeling good. So, but definitely can with those it's. Other than the healthcare and the weapon, the other thing is super shocking for sure. But I think there's one more part 3 to this. So these are really good. I'm gonna have to go back to that one girl because I think she has some more to say. So I'm gonna have to check that out. But guys, appreciate the recommendation. Y'all make sure y'all hit that subscribe button. Send more recommendations down. Stay tuned for that part 3. That's all I have. Y'all let me know in the comments what you think. And y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.